Good morning, everybody. Again, thank you for coming to the Governor's Office of Federal Assistance for this fantastic training that we're being offered, a scope of work and budget, the backbone of grant applications. And before we kick off, I'd just love to give you a brief overview of the Office of Federal Assistance. So next slide. All right, about us. So the Governor's Office of Federal Assistance, or OFA, was created with the passage of Assembly Bill 445 in the 81st legislative session. In our vision is that OFA, we support our stakeholders in obtaining, increasing, and maximizing federal assistance. And our mission is to reduce barriers by providing inclusive, collaborative, comprehensive, and centralized support in obtaining federal dollars for Nevada. And one of those methods of support are providing these great free virtual trainings to all of you. And we're so pleased to have a really large crowd today. So next slide. All right, some general housekeeping before we kick off some really great things. Again, welcome. And our training, like I said, is being recorded, and we will stop it at the end during the question and answers. And also, today's training and video and all the resources shared and provided will be posted on our website, and then we'll also email them out to all of our registered attendees, so you'll be able to get them in your inbox soon, as well as on our website. And also, if you have a question, please feel free to drop it in the chat. And then also, if you've got some questions that you would like our great presenter, Sandy Walls, to answer, or anybody else from the OFA team, please feel free to drop it in the chat as well. And also, closed captioning is available, so please click the CC button at the bottom of your screen. All right. And today I'm so pleased to introduce your trainer, Sandy Wallace, our Executive Grants Analyst. She has 30 plus years of fantastic experience in all areas of federal grants, and comes to you to provide some great information, knowledge, and resources. And we are so pleased to be able to offer this training today. So I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to Sandy.
Thank you, Kristen. Can you guys see me? So I just wanted to thank everybody for attending as well. I feel truly humbled by all the people who registered today. And I wanted to start the training today by sharing a little funny story about when I first started writing grants and developing budgets. So my supervisor was, I worked for a nonprofit substance abuse treatment program, and we wanted to provide workforce development for the clients. So we started a janitorial business, cleaning offices after the offices were closed. So I had to develop a budget, and of course I'd never been a janitor and didn't know much about being a janitor. And so I called a company and I said, hey, can you guys share with me the supplies that you provide for each janitor so that I know what kind of things to include in the budget? And they were so nice to do that. And that's one of the things that I found, that, you know, don't be afraid to ask questions of the community, because I have found that people are really willing to provide information and advice and help you develop grants and develop grant budgets. So I was so proud of myself, and I did the budget, and my executive director was reading the grant when I had finished the draft, and she started laughing, and she said, Sandy, you've only included one sponge in the supplies for all these janitors, and there's going to be a crew of like 5 people that are going to be cleaning the office. She said, what are they going to do? Pass the sponge around to each other? And it just, we were just laughing, and it was just a lesson to me of how important it is to think things through. So that's, you know, one of the things that I've found is that the grant writing is a step-by-step process, and It just requires, divide and conquer and follow a step-by-step process and think it through, just as if you were going on a vacation. I always say if you can plan a vacation, you can write a grant, because it's the same decision-making process of where you're going to go, who are you going to take with you, what are you going to do while you're there, what's it going to cost. So let's get started, and we will have questions at the end. I'm going to try to finish leaving at least 15 minutes or 10 minutes at the end of our presentation today. So I'm going to turn off my camera and we'll get going. So our objectives today are to learn how to develop a line item budget using the 9 most common federal budget categories. Then develop a budget narrative, which is also sometimes called a budget justification, and learn how to develop a grant scope of work. So our project today, we're just imagining that we're going to write a grant. So our project is that the Willow Tree Federally Qualified Health Center needs to offer COVID boosters to its service population of 5,000 patients beginning in October 2023. The project will involve a media campaign to inform the patients and encourage them to get the booster, administration of the booster shots at the health center, and follow-up healthcare as needed. So this is our project description, and this is how I advise everybody to start a grant. Write a little paragraph that describes what you're going to do, what your project is. So this is our little paragraph. And today we're going to have 3 pop quizzes, just to let you know. So be prepared for a pop quiz. So pop quiz number 1. Based on the project description that I just shared with you, what are 3 things, what costs that should be included in the budget? So Kristen is going to put up a poll and everybody can answer. You can look at those answers and then tell me which one you think is the right one, and then we'll let everybody know what everybody thinks. Kristen?
Yes, can you see the poll? Ready for me to close it?
Whenever you're ready.
Okay. Okay, the poll is closed. In the chat, you should be able to see the results.
So can you read the results, Kristen?
Sure, absolutely. So for option 1, the office supplies, printing, conference travel, 16%. The second one, social media, healthcare staff, COVID vaccination, 73%. And then the last one, COVID vaccinations, healthcare staff, candy suckers was 9%.
So thank you very much, everybody. You got it right. Most of us got it right. The middle answer is the correct one: social media, healthcare staff, and COVID vaccinations. Although I will say that I think that COVID vaccination staff and candy suckers could also be included, but the federal budget usually doesn't allow for food, although they do allow for some snacks in certain cases. So we'll all learn about that as we go. So that number, the third choice could be an option as well. Thank you so much. So the next one, we're going to start with the budget. Now, the title of today's training is a scope of work and a budget, the backbone of grant applications. And I always say, it's the skeleton of the grant application. It's the 2 items that really describe what you're going to be doing and how much funding you're going to need in order to do it. And so I'm going to reverse our title today and start with the budget, because that is how I've learned after 30 years of writing grants to start. It took me about 10 years to realize that I'm asking for money. So it's really common in our grant writing world to do the budget separately in the finance office, for example. The finance people will do the budget and they'll give it to you at the end of the grant application process. I strongly encourage you not to do this. Become a friend with your finance people. Invite them to your grant development meetings early. Understand what's going to be included in your budget, because your budget will then tie to your scope of work. So every cost that you're including in your budget needs to be represented somehow in the scope of work, so that the federal reviewers or the whatever grant you're writing can see how the money you're requesting is justified in the activities that you'll be doing. So we're going to start with the budget today. So a line item budget is just a method that we use to create and monitor financial spending. Many of you probably have a budget that you use to monitor your personal spending, rent, food, gas, car insurance, car payments, those kinds of groups. And they're grouped together by major costs. So the standard form 424 is the federal budget that is most used in most grant applications. There's also a standard form for construction program budgets, but we're going to use this one since it's the one that is most common. And even if you're writing a foundation or corporate grant, to me, these line items make sense. So I kind of use them over and over again, depending on what I'm doing. But please follow, whenever you're writing a grant, the instructions that the funder gives you to the letter. So if they give you a different budget format, use that. Just follow what they tell you. Our trainings are just kind of general to tell you what is common. So the 9 items that are common in a federal grant application are personnel, fringe benefits, travel, equipment, supplies, contractual, some construction, we'll talk about that, other, total direct charges, indirect charges, and totals. So we're going to go through each one of those and let's just start going. Okay, for personnel, you want to think about who is going to be paid with the grant funds, and then list those people by their title and their name if that's appropriate. Show the annual salary rate and the percentage of time to be devoted to the project. One tip that I do is I think of a 40-hour typical work week, and I think, okay, how much time is this person realistically going to spend on this grant? And if it's, full-time or half-time, 20 hours a week, or maybe it's only 5 hours a week because they'll be maybe supervising. So then you can figure out a percentage from that. It's kind of an easier way of thinking about what's realistic. In the personnel line item, only list the employees of the applicant organization, and then all other grant funded positions that are external would be listed under the consultants or the contract categories. Fringe benefits are payroll taxes and any other benefits that your agency provides, such as healthcare and retirement. Sometimes they ask you to show the computations for the payroll taxes and the healthcare and retirement. Sometimes you can do a percentage of salaries. So for example, some of the agencies I've worked at, like the fringe benefits represent 21% of the total salary request. Travel is travel to an external location, usually not within the state, but it could be within the state since we're a large state. You want to itemize the travel expenses by the project personnel. So if people are going to training, you want to tell how many people are going to training. You want to show the math, show how you figured out the costs. The federal government uses the GSA per diem rates, the General Services Administration. So even for the state, we use those rates as well. And that'll give you the acceptable amount to pay for a hotel, what the meal per diem rate is, and the miscellaneous expenses. You want to list all the travel and meals for each training project or separate conference travel or meeting travel. And then, I just give you more information about what is transportation, like air, train, buses. I'm not going to read every slide as we go through today because you all have received a copy of the slides, but I'll just kind of give you some of the points on each slide because this tends to be pretty detailed. So equipment in a federal grant is anything that's $5,000 or over. If you're renting or leasing equipment, it should be shown in the contractual category. You want to, I'm not an accountant. I've never even taken a bookkeeping class. I've been an executive director of an agency and learned how to use QuickBooks. So anything that I've learned is on the job. So please don't hold me to being an accountant or a bookkeeper. Supplies are things like office supplies, postage, program or training materials, paper, expendable equipment less than 5,000, such as books and computers and cell phones. Some other, oh, I'm sorry. Now for contractual, you want to describe the product or service to be procured by contract and provide an estimate of the cost. One of the things that you want to be really careful about is when you're having consultants or particularly consultants is there are guidelines that the state has and the federal government has on who is really considered a consultant versus an employee. And a consultant is usually somebody who has 2 or more clients. So if you're one of their clients, then they're considered a consultant and they work independently, which means they don't have to be supervised every day. If you're hiring somebody who does not work independently, who you're going to have come in the office and supervise, and you are their only employer, that person really is a part of your personnel, and you need to pay the fringe benefits. It's kind of common in our world to sometimes think, oh, we can hire a consultant to do that when those consultants really turn out to be employees. So be careful of that. Construction, as a rule, isn't included in federal in the federal budgets for the non-construction programs. You can sometimes do minor repairs or renovations and put those expenses in this category, but there is a separate budget for construction programs. So in other, you want to list everything else. Other is kind of where if it's not in the above categories, you put it in the other section. This might include rent. Some of the other things that it includes are consultant costs, local travel. So a lot of times people put the mileage reimbursement in the travel category, where it really should be in the other category. Insurance, printing and publications, the training registration costs. You'll put the travel costs in travel for the training, but you'll put the registration costs in the other category. And administrative costs, if you don't have an indirect rate and you need someone to manage the grant, it is an allowable administrative expense to charge grant management to a federal budget. And this is where you would list the cost of that grant management. So the total direct cost is the sum of all of those items above. And then your indirect costs. Indirect costs are the expenses that it costs you to do business that you can't readily apply to each different grant that you might have. For example, some agencies that I've worked at have had upwards of 80 active grant awards, and they can't, it would be such a small percentage to try to charge a percentage of all their utilities to each grant, or their accounting services, or their human resources staff. So that's what indirect costs represent. And you can only charge indirect costs to a federal grant if you have a negotiated rate with your cognizant federal agency, which is the agency that you receive the largest amount of federal funds for. Usually you have to work with an accounting firm or your financial officer to establish an indirect cost rate, and you need to get it approved by the cognizant federal agency. If you don't have an indirect rate because you don't have a high enough grant award from a federal agency at the time, you can sometimes use the 10% de minimis rate. And this rate was established by the federal government to assist particularly small nonprofits and small organizations. And so you'll charge 10% of your, and that's to represent the cost that it takes you to manage that grant. So what does a budget line item look like? This is just a sample of how I develop a budget that kind of helps me, but again, follow whatever format that your grant instructions tell you to follow. If there's not a format, I have found this one works for most instances. So I start with the line items. So you'll see for our project today, and this is not, this isn't exactly the final, let's consider this a draft. So I just started thinking, okay, we have our project, we're going to provide shots. So who would provide a shot? And who's going to manage the project? So I thought, okay, the nurse, let's hire a nurse and we'll pay for her salary for 3 months. And I just kind of estimated that she was making $100,000 a year. Then I thought, okay, who's going to give the shots? And when I worked at Nevada Health Centers many years ago, our medical assistants were trained to be able to provide the shots. So I budgeted some people in there for shots. And then you'll see how I showed the math. 5,000 monthly salary times 3 staffs times half time FTE. FTE stands for full-time equivalent, for those of you who don't know that, and then for 3 months. So that's how I arrived at that cost. Then we talked about how the project would also involve follow-up healthcare if anything was identified when the person came in for a shot. And then you're also going to have to post things to the medical records. So I thought, well, we might need some medical clerks because there's a lot of patients in this population. And I didn't know for sure that that the medical assistants and the nurse could take care of all the patient record information that we needed to follow. So that's why I included that position. Those 2 positions. Then the fringe benefits, I figured 21%, so you can figure out your own percentage. I didn't think that any travel would be needed for this project or equipment. For supplies, I thought for sure they're going to need to purchase the vaccinations. I have no idea whether that's really what it costs for a COVID vaccination, but I put $50 in. This just gives you a way to start. And as I'm talking, you'll see that by doing this line item budget, it does bring up a lot of questions, and you'll find out what you know and what you don't know. And so then you'll say to yourself, oh, I better go check, so if you're the grant writer or you're the executive director or you're the a department head, but you're not the one that's actually doing the work and purchasing those supplies. This helps you learn who to talk to in your organization to find that information. Grant writing, I've always said, is a bunch of hunting and gathering and being a private detective and then dividing and conquering. So if you can remember those things as you're doing these steps, it'll bring to the top of your mind, oh, I need to go and find this out. So I didn't think that we would have any contractual supplies. I thought for the marketing, the social media, they might do it in-house, but maybe they'll hire a firm. So I put in a charge for a contract with a marketing firm. You might want to get several, like in your budget justification, which we'll get to in a minute, you might want to have several bids or get several quotes from a marketing firm and then pick the first, the one that you think is the best bid, either the lower bid or something where they'll meet, you like their reputation or you like the activities that they've included in their quote. There was no construction in this project, I didn't think. Some of the other costs I thought would be printing of the media campaign materials. It depends on if it was going to be online, or maybe they do some posters, or maybe they put some ads in papers, or so I need to include some costs for that. So then you total everything up. And if you don't have an indirect rate, we'd use the 10% de minimis rate. So that's what I used here. So you apply the 10% to those total direct costs, and that gives you your amount for the de minimis and then the totals at the bottom. So that's a line item budget, and that's our idea today for that project that we're talking about with the Willow Tree Federally Qualified Health Center. So a budget narrative is the next piece usually that people ask for. It's usually a written statement, like on a Word document. It's actually a narrative which justifies each cost, how you arrived at the cost and why the cost is needed. However, some agencies and some funders also use a budget narrative as an opportunity for you to give further detail about how you arrived at the cost. So again, use whatever format they ask you for, and know that different people have a different definition of what a budget narrative justification is. So some people's budget narratives, to me, actually look like line item budgets, but just use whatever they tell you to use. So a sample budget narrative, and you'll notice, I give you one here that is a sample one. And you'll notice that this has nothing to do with our project. And I did this on purpose because I wanted to show you that there is so much information nowadays online. So if you find yourself being asked to write a grant and develop a grant budget, and you've never done a budget narrative, Google budget narratives for federal grants, and you'll be amazed at what comes up. So as I was thinking about our line item budget, I thought, I wonder if there's already a COVID budget somewhere on the internet that'll help me decide what to include in a budget. And I found this, and I was like, isn't that cool? So now I look at their supplies, and they've given incentives, and they have, it tells me more information that I, as a grant writer, wouldn't know of how to create a grant program or project. And there's so much information out there nowadays that can help you figure this out. So what you'll see as you read through this is where you justify. So you say, we're going to hire a project coordinator for this grant, and she's going, or he is going to provide oversight of all aspects of the project. And it talks about what that person will do. So you're justifying why you need that person. And you're also providing more detail. So let's keep going. So my pop quiz number 2, what is the purpose of a budget narrative? To justify the line item budget expenses, to provide additional details on the line item expenses, or both of the above? Kristen, can you put on the poll?
The poll has been launched.
And let us know what you find out.
Give it just about 10 more seconds. We got quite a few people on this training, so it looks like people are still putting in their responses, so thank you. All right, hopefully you all are giving your answer. I'll give you 5 more seconds, and then I think we'll be ready to close the poll. Okay, I have closed the poll. And here are the results. Okay, so for the first one, to justify the line item budget expenses, we had 0% on that one. To provide the second, to provide additional detail on the line item expenses, 0%, and then both of the above, 98%.
Well, thank you so much, everyone. You're right, and you're showing me that my questions are very easy, which we did on purpose. We'll get harder as we do further trainings, but thank you very much for all your answers. Let's keep going. So we'll get to the scope of work next. So we've done a line item budget and we've done a budget justification. Now, once you have done those documents, I want you to pull them out in front of you. And as you develop this scope of work, you're going to be taking those costs and showing the activities that you're going to do in order to spend that money. Grants are basically, again, remember, we're asking for money. So now we're going to show what we're going to do with that money and how we're going to spend it. So you want to have that budget side by side. And this is why you always want to work really closely with whoever is developing the budget and your finance office to make sure that you haven't left anything out and that every cost is needed and reasonable. So there are many different names for a scope of work. Everybody has their own kind of work, names to describe these. There's things called a scope of work, a work plan, a Gantt chart for project management, timelines, implementation plans, whatever people call it. Use whatever is included in the grant application guidelines if they have it. If they don't have it, I give you a format to use just because I think it's a good management tool to help you in the grant writing process. The grants.gov does have a standardized work plan and they're trying to standardize grant applications now. So the link to that work plan is included there. This is a sample of that work plan. You'll see that they ask you to put your organization name, the project title, and your goal and objective. And then you can add different ones. So your project might have 2 or 3 goals or 4 objectives under goal number 1 or objective number 1. So then you list what the milestone is, what the description of the milestone, the staff who are responsible, and the target quarter or frequency. So this is just a standardized form. The one that I like, which if they don't have a format for you to use, I like this format because it really makes you show how you're going to do everything. So our objective for this grant, just for an example, is by the end of October 23, and since I said that we were going to start this project in October 2023, I should have said by the end of December 2023, for example. So this makes you see, you'll have your little paragraph project description, you'll have your budget, and this will make you think about the time period, like when will the grant start, when will the program start, and whether it's realistic or not. So we had a 5,000 patient population, and our objective is to reach at least 3,000 to have them receive a shot. So the first activity I thought was contract with the marketing firm for the media campaign, and the executive director might be the appropriate person to do that. And they would do it by this date, and the proof that I would have on file in case I ever had a site visit from the funding agency would be the executed contract. So the evaluation tools, and if someone was going to evaluate your grant, they would be looking for these documents to show that you had done this. So then the next step would be assign the nurse as a project manager. So the executive director or the CEO, I thought, might be the person who would do that. And then when would they do it? And then how would we know that it was done? Assign the medical assistants, schedule and hold the planning meetings, weekly, monthly, quarterly. And this is where you want to talk to the people who are actually going to be doing the work. Because sometimes the people who write the grants are not the people who do the actual work. And the people who are going to do the work can give you so much information about whether your plan will work or not. And as you're doing this, you want to share it with your staff and get their buy-in, because these are the people who are going to carry out your grant. And your grant is basically, you're making a persuasive argument that you can take this money, do these steps, and achieve the results that you want to achieve. So you want to make sure that your staff and all your partners are invested and on board and agree with your approach. And as you write the scope of work, you'll start to see maybe some holes in your approach, or you'll say to yourself, oh, maybe that's not going to work. Or other people will say, no, that's not going to work. Or here's another way we could do it. Or we don't need a marketing firm. We have a marketing person who can do it. So it helps your decision-making process. I really, when I found to myself that, when I realized as a grant writer that the budget and a scope of work were the tools that I needed to do first in order to write a grant, it made the grant writing process so much easier. All the other sections of a grant then become support for these two, well, actually 3 documents: the budget narrative, and the scope of work. When you write your needs section, that's a bunch of research and information that shows why you need this project. When you write your section about the personnel and their qualifications, you're including the personnel that are listed in your budget. Everything else in the grant application wraps around the scope of work and the budget. Then when you get the grant, you pull the scope of work and the budget out and re-present it to your partners and your staff who are going to be doing the project, so that they can use these as a management tool as they go forward. A lot of times grants can be, the grant narrative can be 50 pages long. If somebody doesn't want to read that grant or doesn't have the time to read the grant, pull out the budget and the scope of work and show them this is really the backbone of the grant, and this is what you need to understand, and this is what you need to do. So I've just found that they are such valuable tools. So pop quiz number 3. What is the backbone of any grant application? Kristen, can you start the quiz?
Yep, I will go ahead and launch the poll. Okay, the poll has been launched. Everyone go ahead and put in your answers. All right. If you're having issues with your poll, you can go ahead and drop it in the chat if you want to participate. If not, that's okay. And looks like I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. All right. So here is our answers. Let's see, for assurances and certifications, we have 2%. A line item scope of work is 98%, and resumes, a key personnel is a 0. Are you there, Sandy? There you are. Oh, looks like we need to just bring up your PowerPoint. Okay, not sure what's going on, but let's see. I will go ahead. Sandy, if you're there, I can go ahead and work on sharing this my screen if that's what you need, if you need to go ahead and pull up your PowerPoint.
I'm just pulling it up. I'm sorry. Sorry about this, guys. My computer made me reboot. Can you see that?
Yes, we can.
Okay, let me go through really fast.
We got to keep it exciting here on our toes.
Sorry about that. Okay, so we did our, I'm sure everybody got that right on the previous slide with the poll, and it is that the backbone of any grant is the budget and the scope of work. So I did want to let everybody else know that we do have a monthly trainings, and here are some of the recent trainings and the link where you can access these trainings. And then our Nevada Grants Manual also has a lot of information from our on how to build a budget, how to understand indirect costs, and how to write a grant narrative. And I've given you the link to the Nevada Grants Manual. And again, I'd like to thank everybody today. Please remember that we are the single point of contact. So when you submit your grant applications, you need to send us a copy if it says that the grant is that you're required to do that. We are the agency that you submit that to. And if you're a state agency, you're also required to let us know that you're going to be submitting a federal grant application. And we'll turn it over now to Kristen, and if anybody has any questions. And thank you very much for your attendance again.
All right, and I think we have one more slide. So just to let you know some of the services that OFA provides, we have our Notice of Funding Opportunity and database. We also have our free federal grant discovery tool. We also provide free technical assistance. So if you are working on your grant application and you have some questions or stuck or just need a little bit of help, we are here to help you do that. So please feel free to reach out to us. And then also, thank you for attending today's free monthly training that we offer. We will have more to come. And also, please sign up for our OFA newsletter so you don't miss out on any of our upcoming trainings, important information, federal grants updates, all kinds of stuff. So it's pretty fantastic thing to have and read. And then also at the end, if you are able to, go ahead and hopefully this works. Fill out a brief survey. If not, if you can't today, that's all right. When we send out all of our slides and the link to the recording of this presentation, the link for the survey will be provided as well. Yes, and let's see. Now, during if you had any questions on any of the material that was presented by Sandy today, here is your chance to ask your questions. Please drop them in the chat. That's what we're here for. And then also, if you have any other general questions regarding the Office of Federal Assistance, please ask them as well. But you've got Sandy here, and if you've got some questions or are looking for some clarification, please drop those questions in the chat box.